Resourceful Designer, episode 27, taking time off from your graphic design business.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer Podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now, your host. He has 2 dogs and a cat keeping him company while he works, Mark DeCote.
Welcome to the podcast. If this is your first time listening, I really appreciate you taking the time to check out my little show about graphic design and web design and running your own business. And if this is not your first time listening, I want to thank you for joining me once again. And before I go any further, I want to remind you that any and all links I talk about in this episode can be found by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 27. Now, I hope you're having a great week so far this week. I can tell you that mine didn't start off so great. You ever have one of those days where you wake up in the morning and you know exactly what your schedule is going to be like? You know what you're going to work on in the morning. Maybe it's a logo for a client or something, and you figure it'll take a couple of hours. And then maybe after lunch, you're going to do some updates to one of your clients' websites. And if you have time later in the afternoon, maybe you'll watch a webinar or a training video or something, or work on some other project for another client. Well, that's how my Monday started off. I woke up that morning, and before getting out of bed, I started going through my schedule in my head, figuring out exactly what I was going to do that day. And I was all gung-ho. It was a really interesting logo I was going to be working on, and I couldn't wait to get to the computer to get started. But I went through my normal morning routine and started going through my emails that had come in from the night before, and I saw one from a client that asked me if I can do a quick update for their website. It was only a price change. They decided to lower a price on something on their membership form. And I thought to myself, I could add this to my schedule to get to, or I can do it right now. It would be a quick 60-second fix, so I might as well go do it. So I logged into the WordPress site, made the quick change. Sure enough, it took about 60 seconds to do. But before I logged out, I noticed that there was a bunch of plugins and stuff that needed updating, and I figured I might as well do it while I was there. Well, lo and behold, one of the updates ended up breaking the website, and I spent the better part of the day getting that site back up and running. When I finally did, I realized that I hadn't finished going through my emails. So I did that, and I came across one where another client with their website, they were in a panic mode, and I hadn't seen this email till the afternoon, that their website and their email was completely down. Now, I quickly got them back up and running on a temporary basis while I figured out what had caused this issue, and it ended up that their hosting package allowed for 1 gigabyte of storage space, and somehow over the weekend, they had exceeded 7 gigabytes. And it took a while to figure out that there was one email from one of their suppliers with a 15 megabyte attachment that for some reason, since Friday afternoon, had been coming in once every 20 minutes. And not just to one email address, it had been coming in to their entire Salesforce. So everybody was receiving the same email on a loop every 20 minutes since Friday. And with the 15 megabyte attachment to it, they quickly surpassed their 1 gigabyte storage allotment. So it took me the rest of the afternoon to figure out that issue and get that taken care of. Luckily, it had nothing to do with my server. It was actually the supplier. It was at their end. Their server was somehow duplicating the email and sending it over and over. So they were able to remedy that. So by the time that crisis was averted, my day was pretty well shot. And I'm sure you've all experienced stuff like this where your schedule gets out of whack for one reason or the other. And that's all just part of running your own business. Luckily, I was able to get back on schedule on Tuesday. I got the logo done that I needed to do, and I've been slowly working my way through the rest of the projects. So it didn't put me back too much, but it was a wasted day because none of that time was billable. So I spent the entire day on Monday working and troubleshooting stuff that I wasn't being paid for. But that's all part of business. Now, before I get on to the meat of this episode, I do have another iTunes review I'd like to share with you. And this one came in from Norman in the USA. And Norman was the gentleman whose question I answered in episode 26. And Norman wrote, "One of my favorite segments from the podcast is the resource of the week. Mark will share a resource that he actually uses, not something some sponsor pays him to sell. And in some cases, where he's using a referral program when telling us about a resource, it is still something he actually can vouch for. And he's sure to tell us when it is a referral program. That to me speaks volumes for his character. I'm coming back week after week for my dose of knowledge. Also, thank you, Mark, for answering my question. It has helped me out immensely. And I have a few shirts on the way." Well, thank you for that, Norman. I hope the shirts work out for you. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, I answered Norman's question in episode 26, which you can listen to at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 26. where he asked about ways to attract new clients. And I told him that when I started off, one of the easiest things I did was I had a t-shirt that said, "I'm a graphic designer, ask me about it." And I got a ton of work from that t-shirt because people would come up to me and say, "You're a graphic designer? Can you do this? Can you do that?" And I would say, "Yeah, sure, I can do that. Let's talk." And I got a whole bunch of business. So let me know how the shirts work out for you, Norman. Now, if you would like to leave a review for me for the podcast, whether or not you listen in iTunes, it's still the best place to leave a review. And you can get there by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/iTunes. Now, what happens when you leave a review? First off, I just want to tell you that I was looking at the top 200 lists on iTunes, and there's some for every category. And in the design category, Resourceful Designer is now part of the top 200 list. I'm way at the bottom of the list, but it's still in the top 200 list for design. Now, when I say design, that encompasses all arts and architecture and crafts and anything that would follow under design. So it's not all graphic design podcasts in there. But I would love it if the podcast worked its way up the list closer to the top. And you can help me with that in two ways. One is leave a review in iTunes, because those reviews help boost the podcast and make it more visible for other people to discover. And the other is just share the podcast with other designers. Let them know what you're listening to, because the more subscribers I get, the more people who listen to the episodes, the higher in that top 200 list this podcast will go. So thank you to everyone who has left me a review. And it doesn't matter if you're in the US, in Canada, in the UK, in France, in Germany. It doesn't matter. Wherever you are, you can leave a review in your own iTunes store. And I've got this great little service called My Podcast Reviews that'll send me an email every time somebody leaves a review, no matter where it is in the world. So you don't have to think that, well, I'm not in the US, so I shouldn't bother leaving a review. Every review does help. Now, as Norman said in his review, I like to share a resource of the week every week. And contrary to what Norman did say, this week, I'm actually going to share a review that I'm not familiar with. It's actually something I just discovered. I am not an affiliate for this in any way, but it's something I discovered and I thought, wow, this is wonderful. It's something I really want to share with everybody. Now, before I share it, let me just give you a little bit of background on how I stumbled across this. I received notice this week that Dollar Photo Club, a stock photo site that I used all the time, was closing. They had actually been acquired, or their parent company had been acquired by Adobe, and everything's switching over to Adobe, and Dollar Photo Club is closing. Now, what I loved about Dollar Photo Club is that all the photos on the site were $1. And they had some pretty decent photos. Not just photos, they also had illustrations and vector graphics, and everything on the site was $1. So it was really easy when working on a project. If you wanted to test out one or two different photos or different things, or if you wanted to combine, you wanted to work with different vector images, you could just download them, and they were just $1 each. So if I downloaded a photo for $1 and ended up not using it, it didn't break the bank. Now, when I found out that they were closing and everything was switching over to Adobe, yes, all our credits from Dollar Photo Club get switched over to Adobe, but I decided to search out to see what other options there were as far as stock photography sites go. And I came across one that I just said I have to share with my listeners. And that site is Photos for Life. And the URL is actually photos4.life. And what Photos for Life is it's a charity photo bank where all the stock photos are created by cancer patients and survivors for other cancer patients. Each and every model you see in the image was personally affected by cancer in their own lives. And they love their lives so much that they want to share it with the world. That's what the website says. Now, this is not a cheap photo site like Dollar Photo Club. Prices in this site range from $8 for non-commercial use all the way up to $850 for an advertising package. And they don't have millions or hundreds of thousands of photos like some of the other sites have. And what makes Photos for Life different from other stock photo services is that 100% of the proceeds from all photo sales are used to finance therapies for other cancer patients. Now, as I said, I've never used their service. I looked at the photos and maybe one day I might need one. Right now, I don't have a use for any of them, but I just thought this was such a wonderful idea that these cancer patients and people were doing this, creating they're beautiful photos. And they're not just photos of people suffering from cancer or anything like that. They are business photos and hobby photos and nature photos and all sorts of stuff, but all the models in the photos are cancer survivors. And I just love the fact that 100% of the proceeds from any photo sale on the site is used to help finance therapies for other cancer patients. So this is the first time that I'm actually suggesting a resource that I haven't actually used, but I would definitely use them in the future should the need ever arise. So if you're curious about them or want to check them out, visit photos4.life. And now, taking time off from your graphic design business. Some people think that being a graphic designer is all fun and games. We sit there and we draw all day and wow, what a peaceful life. But they don't realize that designing can be stressful. There is a lot involved. We've got deadlines. We've got ornery clients sometimes to deal with, dealing with criticism, constructive or not, or just wasting a day troubleshooting an issue like what happened to me on Monday. So graphic design is not all fun and games. It can actually be very stressful. Now, luckily, if you're a home-based graphic designer, that means you're your own boss and it means you're making your own rules. So there's nothing stopping you from taking some me time to de-stress. Take some time away from the designing and away from your business to de-stress. It could be a day, it could be a couple of hours. Now, I'm not talking about vacation time. Vacation is something completely different. You do that with the family, you go out. Most of the time you get out of the house, you go away for a few days. And that is great. We all need that. That's a great de-stressing time. But what I'm talking about is just some me time. Not with the family, not with the kids, not with your spouse. Just me getting away from the business. As I said, for either a few hours or even a day or more if need be, in order to unwind and let the stress ease out of you. Because designers are creative people, it is harder to think and be creative when you feel that stress. Can we work under pressure? Of course we can. Actually, I know most designers work very well under pressure. But that pressure can build up to the point where it starts affecting you both mentally and possibly physically. And that's one of the difference about running your own business and working for an agency. Because when you're working for an agency, at the end of the day, you go home and you have that stress-free time. You can unwind, deflate, or whatever. Just relax. 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock rolls around, whatever time you work till. And then you hop in your car or your bike or whatever, and you just go home and you don't worry about it till the next day. Sure, you might be thinking about some jobs, but that's all you're doing is thinking about it. When you're running a home-based business, sometimes it's not that easy to get away. Because even if you do step away from your office at 5 o'clock, you're not that far away and it's easy for you to get in. And if you start thinking about something, you know you have a tight deadline, something coming up, or you have a big job that you're really worried about. You always have that temptation to go back to work. And sometimes it's very easy to blow off family and friends and get back to the computer and get back to working at all hours of the day. So to some people, working from home, being your own home-based graphic designer is much more stressful than working at an agency or some company where you're working in their design office. And that's why home-based graphic designers need to take some me time. Now, I'm not telling you to blow off deadlines or to extend a project beyond what you've promised. You've got to find the little opportunities, the little windows in your schedule where you can take some me time. But instead of filling those windows with other tasks, it is perfectly all right to cross them out and say, I'm not going to do anything there. This is time for myself. And when I say time for myself, it can be something personal for yourself, but it can also be something for your business. And I'll get to that. So what are some personal things you can do? Well, sometimes when I take me time, I'll step away from my office and I'll take some time to do some work or some chores around the house. Maybe I'll mow the lawn, or in the fall, I'll go out and rake some leaves, or maybe it's just taking the dogs for a walk. And I can do that sometimes when I want to de-stress. Just doing some work around the house. Maybe there's some little home repairs you've been putting off. Take some time during the day and do those. You can also go out, run some errands around town, go for a walk in the woods, or go to a museum or some other inspirational place that might refuel your creativity. I don't do it very often, but we've got a small art gallery downtown that changes on a regular basis what they're displaying. And if I happen to be down there, I'll stop in just to have a look what other people are doing. That's the sort of stuff that refuels me. I look at these things. I look at paintings and sculptures, and even though I'm not a painter, I'm not a sculptist, I can appreciate the work that other people have put into these, and it inspires me to be a better designer. And then when these times are done, whether I just took a couple of hours or if I took an entire day, the next time when I sit down at the computer, I'm revigorated and ready to get to work, and I can give my 100% again. Now that's great if you want to take some personal time to do stuff. But what if you want to de-stress from designing, but you don't want to take time away from your work? Well, there are a lot of other business things you can do instead of taking time off. You know, all those little tasks you keep putting off, like cleaning your office, My desk is a mess. I'm notorious for having a messy desk. And every once in a while, I'll take an afternoon and just say, you know what? I'm not going to design. I'm going to clean my desk and do that. Or I've got a drawer. I don't know if you're like me. I've got a drawer on my desk that's kind of the catch-all. If there's something I don't know what to do, it gets thrown in that drawer. And every few months, I'll open up that drawer and just start going through it and trying to figure out what I need to do with all this stuff. I usually get about halfway through it because the other stuff I'm just not sure about, but I'll purge a bunch of stuff or finally do something with some of the stuff in there that I kept saying I'm going to put off for another day. That's the sort of stuff I'll do during my me time. Just a couple of months ago, I went through my filing cabinet and I was amazed at how much stuff I was able to throw out, or not throw out, but throw in the recycling bin from old clients and notes and stuff that I know I will never need again. And I probably ended up cleaning out half my filing cabinet. Now, other stuff you can do that's still technically business related, but your mind is not on the creativity and working. It's kind of giving your mind a break. And that's simple stuff like updating your computer. Maybe it's time to upgrade your operating system, or maybe you have some software that needs updating, or maybe you wanted to install some RAM on your computer or a new hard drive. I've got a hard drive sitting right in front of my computer here that's still in the box that I bought during Boxing Week because it was on sale. And I had a specific task for this hard drive that I wanted it for. And yet it's still sitting in the box. I haven't hooked it up yet. So that's something that the next time I take some me time and just decide that I'm going to work on business stuff, but not necessarily creativity or design, that's the sort of thing I'll do during then. Now, speaking of your computer, you can also just clean out your computer. I'm talking about old client files that you might not necessarily need on your computer. You can save them to an external hard drive or a flash drive, or maybe burning them to a DVD or Blu-ray isn't the best thing anymore, but you can get them off your computer and free up some disk space. Purge some unwanted files. Maybe you have some old applications that came in that are no longer working with your new operating system. Or sometimes you buy software bundles and you might get 5, 6, 7 pieces of software and you install them all, but there's some that you absolutely never use. Well, why should they take up disk space? So now's the time to get rid of them. You can also organize your fonts so that it's much easier for you to find stuff whenever it comes to searching for that special font for your next project. Now, I've talked about my font management software of choice, and that's Extensis Suitcase. I swear by it. I've been using it for probably a dozen years, if not more. And I don't think I would ever design without it. If you want to know more about it, you can visit resourcefuldesigner.com/font management. And every once in a while, I'll go through and I'll see if there's another way I want to organize my fonts. I've got them organized in scripts, in serifs, and sans serifs. I've got Celtic fonts and handwritten fonts and symbol fonts and all sorts of stuff. But maybe there's something else I might want to do. Maybe one day I'll create a suitcase folder for all the compressed or condensed fonts, or maybe another one for all the extended fonts, because I don't have those now, and maybe someday that might come in handy. There are times where I'm looking for a logo and I said, I'd really like a nice extended font. And I kind of know which fonts are in my head, but when you're a graphic designer, you start accumulating lots and lots of fonts over time, and there's no way for you to remember every single one. So there might be a beautiful extended font that I actually have on my computer that I don't remember I have. So maybe one day I'll do that. So cleaning out things and organizing things are great things to do when you take a me day, when you take time off from designing. Now, if you feel like you want to be more productive because you might feel guilty about taking some time off, there's a lot of things you can do as well. You could experiment with new software. I mentioned buying software bundles. I don't know how many times I bought a bundle because there was 1 or 2 pieces of software in it I wanted, and it came with a few others that I had no idea what they were, but they're sitting on my computer. Well, during some me time, I might go through my applications folder and look at all these different pieces of software that are in there and try them out, get a feel for them, figure out if there's something I might use. If they're not, if I try them out and I figure that this is software I will never use, then I just delete it from the computer. And that goes back to purging and cleaning out the computer. But every once in a while, I'll come across a piece of software and I'll say, you know what? I completely forgot I had this. Or I'd never opened this software and I didn't know it was capable of this. And this could be handy or useful or whatever. So take some time to experiment with the software. You can also take courses or watch a webinar or something like that. Now, a great place to take courses is lynda.com. Now, I do have an affiliate link for Lynda, and if you do decide to check them out, I would really appreciate it if you visited resourcefuldesigner.com/Lynda, and that's Lynda with a Y. But they have some wonderful courses. And sometimes that can be a very productive point of your business, is learning, putting some time aside as me time in order to improve yourself. Learn new software, learn some new design strategies, learn some new business strategies by taking courses. And you might not feel so guilty that way because you're actually improving your business, but you're taking your brain away from having to think about the graphic design, the actual creative element, which is the part that gets stressful at times. Other things you can do is go to some network events if you know stuff's happening during the day, or go visit a client out of the blue. I've done this many a times where I'll happen to be driving downtown and going by one of my clients' establishments, and I'll just pull in, walk in on them unexpected, and just say, "Hi, how's your day? How are things going?" And you know what's funny? There are a lot of times when I've done this, and I've actually walked out of there with a project to do. One of those things where the client says, "I was thinking about you," or, "I was thinking about this thing and I didn't know when I'd get to you, but since you're here, you have time to talk about this project." So that's a great way for you to de-stress, go out, visit your clients, and even if they don't give you a project, it gets you in their mind. They remember you, and the next time they think of something, they'll appreciate the fact that you just stopped in to say hi and see how things were doing. I do this all the time. There's an office building downtown that houses 3 of my clients, and anytime I have to go visit one of them, I always make a point of at least poking my head in the door of the other 2 just to say hi, how are things? I was just thinking of you. I was in the neighborhood, and just give them that presence of mind that, yes, Mark is here. Mark is thinking of them. And the next time they need something, they'll think of Mark. So that's a great thing to do with your me time. If you happen to be out and about, just stop in and visit a client to say hi. So that's pretty well all I wanted to say this week. I know this is a much shorter episode than it has been in the past few, but I just wanted to talk about the need for taking some time for yourself, especially if you're running your own business. You can't do it every day, 5 or sometimes 7 days a week. You will burn yourself out. And it's the creativity part that'll burn yourself out. You're working on that, and it's hard to be creative whenever it's on demand, when you are being forced to do it. And sometimes you need to step away from that, let your batteries recharge, so that when you do come back, you're at full strength. And as I said, that could be stepping away from your office altogether, getting out of the office, doing something else, either around the house, around the neighborhood, around the city, whatever. It could be in your office, cleaning stuff up, like your desk, your filing cabinet, the physical world that you're working in. Or it could be your computer itself, doing some much needed maintenance on your computer that has nothing to do with design. Or it could be improving you as a designer, as a business person. Whether you're experimenting with software, taking courses, watching webinars, networking with people, or just going to visit your clients out of the blue for no reason other than to say hi. And trust me, when you're done with all this and you finally do get back to the computer and you're back to designing, you will appreciate that time you took to de-stress, because you will find that your design ability, your creative ability, the ideas you come up with will all come to you much easier. And chances are will be better ideas. So that's the end of this week's topic. Now, I did get a question of the week this week. This one came in from Sean. Now, Sean sent me a bunch of questions, and they all have to do with asking clients for budgets. And there were some really good questions he asked, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to devote an entire episode of the podcast around client budgets. But for now, I'm going to answer one of Sean's questions. And that question was, should you ask a client for their budget in the initial project questionnaire? Now, this question can have many different answers depending on who you ask. Some designers want to get the budget right up front so they know they're not wasting their time talking to a client. Where other designers would prefer get to know the client a little bit before they bring up the subject of budget. I tend to be more towards the latter. I want to talk to a client because before we start talking about a budget and how much it's going to cost them, not only do I want to vet them a little bit, but I want them to get to know me and my worth, my skills, my ability, what I could bring to them before we start talking budget or costs. Now, I won't go too far before bringing up the subject, but the reason I do this is that there have been times where a client has contacted me, let's say for a website design, and they start talking. They want a very basic design. You've got those catchphrases that you hear. We want something simple. We don't want something too big. So you kind of get the idea right off the bat that their budget is probably on the lower end. So I've already got an idea of what I'm dealing with without actually asking them about their budget. But I'll go in and I'll start talking to them about the website and what are they looking for in the website. And of course, most clients don't actually know what they're looking for. They just want a website because they know they need one. So that's when I go in and I'll tell them, well, are you looking for a website to create sales? Are you selling something on the website? Are you creating a client funnel to bring people in? Are you creating some sort of knowledge database to try to help your support team so that clients are not bugging them as much, that the information's on the website? Do you want to drum up leads and qualified sales through the website? There's so many things about a website that most clients don't even think about. And when you start bringing this stuff up and say like, yes, I can build a website that is essentially an online version of your printed brochure, which if you want me to be honest with you, isn't going to do very much for your business. Or I can build a website that can convert visitors into leads, that can convert visitors into sales, or so forth. And when you start explaining that stuff to them, their idea of what they're getting from you starts to build and grow. And then they start realizing that what they wanted will not cut it. And then when you bring up the idea of budget and they come back and they say, well, we had a budget of $1,000, say, for the website. And then I say, well, sorry, I couldn't start this website for anything less than, say, $3,000. Then all of a sudden we get into an area where the client now knows what is possible and what we can do. I'm doing more than just building a website and saying, here's a website. Thank you very much for your money. I'm now creating a partnership with them where I'm going to build a website that'll help generate leads, that'll help generate traffic. And when they see the value in that, I've had many times where a client will come in and tell me, well, they had $1,000 budget, but after talking to me, they're willing to spend more and they're willing to pay the price that I offer them. So that's one reason why I don't ask for a budget up front. I always get to know my client and let them know what I'm capable of. Because the hard thing is if that same client came up to me at the beginning and said, Mark, we're looking for somebody to design a website. We have a budget of $1,000. What can you do? Then it's going to affect my way of thinking. And I'm not going to go into the whole lead generation and sales conversions and all that. I'll look and say, well, if you only have $1,000, then I'm going to build you a bare bones website that'll look good to visitors, but it's going to be basically an enhanced version of your printed brochure. And I wouldn't be as inclined to explain to the client everything I can do. Same thing goes for a project like, say, a logo design. Somebody comes to me with a logo design. I talk about logo, but I also talk about all the peripherals, how we can incorporate that logo and how we can use that logo to build their business. I talk about the logo on t-shirts, on the side of their truck, if it's some sort of business that would be appropriate, on billboards, on flyers, on pens, on anything that they would use. I talk about how they can incorporate the logo and all the different things. We're going to build a logo that can do this. We're creating a brand. We're not just creating a logo. And sometimes by doing this, I get the client so excited that somebody that didn't have a budget before, where they were thinking that they might spend $100 or $200 on a logo, now all of a sudden, I've excited them enough about the possibilities of what we can do that they're willing to spend much more than what the price they initially had when they came into the conversation. Because again, if somebody came in and said, Mark, I need you to design a logo for me. I have a $200 budget. That's all I can spend. Well, I'm not going to start thinking about all these other things. I'm just going to think about, okay, I only have $200 to spend. I'm going to do a really crappy logo because I don't have a whole lot of time to spend researching the company, getting to know their business plans, getting to know their mission statement, and all this stuff. I'm just going to look at this, say, okay, what do? They do this. Okay, I'm going to design a quick logo here. What do you think? There you go. Give me $200. And that's doing the client a disservice because I know I can offer them so much more. And when it comes down to it, the client that comes up to me afterwards and I tell them all this stuff and they say, well, I only have a budget of $200. I might tell them, well, thank you very much, but I can't create your logo for that price. So thank you very much for that question, Sean. In the next few weeks, I'll create a budget-centric episode of the podcast and I'll answer a lot more of the questions you gave me. So that's it for this week's episode. Next week's podcast, I'll be covering secrets you should be keeping from your graphic design clients. Now, I want to remind you that if you're looking for any of the links I mentioned in this episode, you can find them at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 27. If you want to send me a question to be answered on a future episode of the podcast, or if you have an idea for a topic for a future episode of the podcast that you'd like me to cover, visit resourcefuldesigner.com/feedback and fill out my form there, or send me an email at feedback@resourcefuldesigner.com. I would also love for you to check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/resourcefuldesigner, or follow me on Twitter at resourcefuld. I want to thank everybody who signed up to my newsletter by visiting marketingboost.net and getting a free copy of my 4-week marketing boost. I really appreciate you checking that out and getting on the newsletter. And if you haven't done so already, you can do the same. You can visit marketingboost.net and sign up there. Or if you're in the USA, simply text Marketing Boost, all one word, to 44222. And you can sign up that way, and you'll still get the free copy of my 4-week marketing boost. And finally, I want to remind you of this week's resource of the week, the wonderful stock photography site by cancer patients for cancer patients, with 100% of the proceeds going towards the treatment programs to help cancer patients. And that's at photos4.life. Well, I am Mark Decote, wishing you all the best in your graphic and web design business, and looking forward to talking to you next week. Until then, stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer Podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.